Welcome to Keiser Voices, the story of success, brought to you by Keiser University Graduate School, here where the academic world meets personal triumph. Join us today as we dive into the captivating tales of success.
Welcome, everybody, back to another amazing episode of Keiser Voices. I'm really excited to have a local community partner join us today on our episode as we celebrate Women's History Month. So I'm excited to introduce you all to my good friend, President and CEO of Neighbors for Neighbors, Katy Meagher. Katy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, so glad to be here and talk about women's history. I'm hopefully have something to say about it in my future.
I think with your focus on the community and empowering the nonprofits, social networking, you have such a vast background of collaboration and communication. I think this is going to be I think this is going to be a good conversation, especially as we take a look at leading with impact, which is today's topic. Leading with impact, one woman's vision for growth and change. And that's kind of where you come in. And I think the best place to start is, can you tell us a little bit about Neighbors for Neighbors for those who maybe aren't local to Fort Lauderdale, Florida?
Sure. So Neighbors for Neighbors is a really unique organization, and that we were started as a response to Hurricane Andrew by what is now known as Channel 4 Television. And so, you'll see those campaigns that'll happen. I'm sure they're happening, like currently in places like in LA and things like that after the wildfires. But what we did worked so well, and we raised so much money that the idea was, well, let's make this a full 501c3. So since October of 1992, we've been our own 501c3, but we have continued our work of sharing what we do on television. So we have a partnership still to this day with CBS 4 in Miami. And that allows us to run PSAs on television and basically kind of toot the horn of those that are in need and how you can help, and then even ways we may have helped. We do a couple shows a year on both Channel 4 and Channel 33 that share kind of like the feel good stories of the impact we've been able to make. And so using the power of media to really, help. But then, we realized, because we were always in that collaborative space, right? Bringing everybody together. Our mission is to connect those in need with those who can help. And what does that mean? Everybody's like, well, so what do you do? And it varies, because sometimes it's disaster relief. Sometimes it's backpacks for kids. Sometimes it's holiday help. Sometimes it is, as simple as, resource. Someone calls our office and says, I've got something. And I'm like, oh, who could benefit from this? One time it was a literal tractor trailer full of cauliflower rice that had been rejected by a major retailer because it was like 1 degree below the temperature, that they allow. And it was like, well, this is either going in the dump, or can we donate it? And one of our partners at FarmShare was able to take it because, of course, their rules aren't as stringent. I mean, it was a little ridiculous, to be honest, to throw away. We're talking $300,000 worth of food. And this was during a pandemic. But what was also cool is, like, it was funny. The guy who called, he was a little annoyed that it took us so long to find the place for it to go. And it was 15 minutes. So, and I was like, I'm good, but come on, 15 minutes. That's pretty impressive to find a whole place for a tractor trailer full. So that's what we do. We, over a course of, say, the past 4 years, for example, we have served 70 plus nonprofit organizations, helped 160,000 people, and brought $7.8 million in resources to not only our community partners, but those in need. And that's from, the floods that happened in Fort Lauderdale to, holiday gifts for families in need. So it's really incredible opportunity to really be there for so many and bring so many resources and just give people a place to give and to be and to receive. We have a saying at Neighbors that helping feels good, and we know it because we see it every day.
That's amazing. You guys are definitely making a large impact in the community. But taking that a step further, and I want to talk a little bit about you, if you don't mind. we're celebrating Women's History Month. So can you share pivotal moments in your journey to becoming a CEO and president? I mean, it wasn't all that long ago that we would be like shocked, like, oh my God, a woman is a CEO and a president of a company.
Right.
So I would
And
love
my
to hear from
father-in-law,
your
who's in
perspective.
his 90s, doesn't, he like forgets that all the time because that was not something that happened in his time, right? And
Hmm.
so um basically I started my journey initially working at Channel 33. And of course Neighbors for Neighbors had been around since 1992. But Channel 33 and Channel 4 weren't together yet. And so I actually got laid off from the company in 2008, and which was just at the time devastating. I remember literally having one of those kind of out of body experiences. I couldn't believe that had lost my job, and I loved what I did, but it you know at the time very stressful. But looking back, like that was the universe going, okay, you can't stay here anymore. And I had been ironically struggling with infertility as well. And so 8 years of trying to have a baby. So I got laid off in March, got a dog in April, and got pregnant by May. And now I have a 16-year-old. So,
Oh.
so it's funny how the universe knows when to push you. Sometimes you won't go yourself, but it'll force you to do that. So what was interesting is, so the day I got laid off, I produced, I was a TV producer at Channel 4 and Channel 33 at the time. And because the stations had merged back then. And and I had forgotten that part so long ago. And so I had gotten a phone call at my desk as I was literally packing up. I'd been there for 11 years and I was packing up, my 11 years of like life in this, building and my career in television. And I got a phone call from the executive director from the Susan G. Komen Foundation here in Miami, Fort Lauderdale. And one of the things I did as a producer, we would do the CBS Health Watch packages. You may still see them. Every month was a topic. So in October, obviously Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And so the station would partner and still does with Komen, and I used to actually sing the national anthem, and so it was like a big thing. So anyway, the executive director and I were friends. Ironically, Hayden had the same birthday, and she called just to say hello. So this is March, and I'm like a blubbering fool, like I just got laid off from my job, and she said, "Oh my gosh, don't you worry, Katie, you're gonna land on your feet." Well, little did I know, she immediately went to her board and said, she was a one-woman show, and they made a position for me. And by June of that year, I was working at Komen, and I worked there for 6 years. And ironically, nonprofits, sometimes boards are a frivolous bunch, and they had actually let her go, and they brought in a woman who just slowly but surely dismantled the organization, burning bridges everywhere. And I probably should have left a long time before that, but she actually fired me because it turned out later I would have caught her stealing money. So she had to
Ooh.
get rid of me. And at the time, it was like a same thing. Sometimes I think for women, we try to like stay in a situation for, because we're gonna champion for it. We're gonna make it right. We're gonna fix it. And sometimes the writing is on the wall and you're like, you need to get the heck out of there and you can't fix it. And I had, as I say to many people, I'd forgotten who I was. I'd forgotten my, I lost my mojo, and I had forgotten my value. And so getting fired, and ironically, like 2 days before Christmas, so she was wonderful. But what a great lesson, because all of a sudden it was like, wait a minute, don't forget who you are. I mean, not to be immodest, but to be empowered, right? I mean, I have skills, I have talents, I have worth. I didn't need that job. Granted, I need a job, but like I was not being valued and I was not being treated right. So I got laid off, and then I got a phone call from a friend, and of course had no neighbors for neighbors for many years. because the Neighbors for Neighbors, the office is actually in the Channel 4 offices, even though it's a separate 501c3. So I knew the executive director. I knew people who worked there, had friends who would work there, but never really fully understood what the organization was doing. So now, mind you, I'd gone from being a TV producer then to working at a nonprofit. And then I got a call from the producer at Neighbors for Neighbors, who was leaving to go take a job at another television station. And so she's like, would you be interested in coming to work for Neighbors for Neighbors? And I was like, maybe, we'll see, So I went in, and I didn't know at the time, but I was there for a job offer, not an interview. They had already had a meeting about me, and a whole team of people came together. The founder of Neighbors for Neighbors, the executive director, people at the television station, the producer, and a bunch of all powerful women, by the way, all women. Who the founder was somebody I had worked with, and she was the community relations director and public affairs director for the television station. But I'd worked with her since I had started at the television Channel 33 in 1997, back in the 1900s. And so I went in, and of course they did the whole slide the number across the table, like, is this acceptable? And you're like, all of those zeros for me, and which, at the time was not a ton of money, but it was, comparable for my career at that point. But it was a reminder that I had not valued myself properly for a long time. So anyway, the rest, I guess you could say, is history. So I've been with Neighbors for Neighbors now 11 years. I've been the CEO. At first I was executive director, and then quickly changed my title because executive director is an antiquated title for nonprofit leaders, and we are CEOs. I'm the president as well because my board of directors made sure that I actually have a say in the vote of the organization, so that I couldn't just be ousted by a frivolous board. Which are very important things. And a lot of times in nonprofits, we're at the mercy of, somebody who thinks they can do it better. And nonprofits are in a weird space because we are, we're supposed to do great work. We're supposed to do good things in the community, but we're businesses, right? So we have to, make sure that we pay our bills and that we, can sustain the company as well. And so a lot of times, people are like, oh yeah, but we're doing all this great work. And you're like, yeah, but you don't have any money in the bank, and tomorrow may not come, payroll is going to happen. And also, compensating people at levels they should be compensated for, just because you work for a nonprofit doesn't mean you have to be an indentured servant and, get pennies. So it was an interesting journey, but let me tell you now, looking back, in fact, I had a conversation today with somebody about, I'm grateful for the bad bosses of my past, for the being fired and laid off. Those were journeys that I had to experience because it helps you appreciate, I always say you cannot have a rainbow without some rain, right? You've got to have the bad weather, right? But those are learning experiences. You can't just keep on a upward trajectory your entire life. Sometimes you got to be knocked down and then step back up again. And so don't be afraid of failure. Failure is, if not as important, but more important than success, because successes we don't seem to focus on so much. So where's the lesson in the pain, right? And now I couldn't imagine being anywhere else. I mean, in fact, yesterday, someone said to me, there couldn't have been a more perfect person to take on the leadership at Neighbors for Neighbors than you. And this is years after I've been, and we were just chatting at a chamber event. And I was like, thank you so much, because I feel that way. And for other people to see it is huge. So I know that was a long version, but I think,
no, it was great. And there's like 3 things I wanna follow up on. And I think I've decided on the first one. I want to ask a follow-up question, if you don't mind. That's a lot. and especially with you sharing, like, I lost my job and I found a job. All well, I had all these other things going on in my personal life, but there was all this that still needed to be done for the greater community. How do you balance the responsibilities of your career and your community, and staying true to those personal values? Because it sounded like for a moment there you kind of got lost when,
Yeah,
towards your end of your tenure at the Susan G. Komen. You got a little lost.
absolutely. And I wasn't putting, it's interesting. We today had a presentation at the chamber about work-life balance. And it's a very interesting thing. The balance is actually never balanced. Sometimes something has to give, right? But I think it is being really authentic, being really honest with yourself, and then also understanding. So for me, I'm a big stickler about I can do my job during a set certain of hours, right? I am not a machine. I am not one to work late into the night and burn the midnight oil to get a project done. Um, you know, and not because I don't have the passion for my organization, but I'm not going to put my best work out at 11 o'clock at night, and nobody is given medals either for like, that person, I mean, they usually they're, exhausted and burned out and not happy. And so a long time ago, and I do this with my team as well. We have a small staff at Neighbors. There's 5 of us, including myself, and I'm very much a stickler about, um, make sure that you're not overworking yourself, manage your time, take lunch, take a break. I mean, we are not machines. And then also, even somebody emailed me and said, hey, could you come to, this? And the answer is sometimes no. i'm
Mhm.
I'm not going to just jump in and do everything I mean, because let me tell you, everybody's got an opinion about where I should be and what I should do. And especially being a part of the chamber, and there's so many different councils and events. And I literally was talking to someone today, and she's like, I just don't know which ones to go to. And I said, well, start with ones that fit in your schedule and look at those. So that'll help you. So if you're not available, don't go, and don't put a burden on yourself. And then just go with the intention of meeting one person. You cannot meet everybody in the room. You never would be able to do that. And you can't make a personal connection anyway. So don't be like, I'm going to network the whole room and everybody's going to get to
Mhm.
know me. Then you've met no one. You've just I remember going to events, and people would be, I call them the card collectors. And they're like, one guy actually came up to me and was like, can I have your card? And I was like, but why? Why do you want my card? Well, so I can call you later. I'm like, no, let's talk now. There may be absolutely no reason for you to have my card. I mean, unless you're like gonna like and if you're going back to a boss who's going, how many cards did you collect today? Um, and it was very interesting. In fact, so Melanie Geddes spoke today at the chamber, and she talked about, you know, that she wasn't going to nickel and dime her team on how many hours they put in, but what did they do? What work product were they giving? What was the quality of their work? we the pandemic has really changed how people work, and I'm the same mindset. I mean, I thank God I don't have to drive to the office every day. Thank God. Because it was a nightmare, and it was such a stressor. And she was saying, can you imagine, being such a stickler about, you better be at your desk by 9 and you better stay there till 5, and you got somebody like white knuckling. I remember driving home to get my daughter from daycare and just panicked because it was like 6:05 and I was supposed to pick her up by 6, and like they were gonna, charge you for every minute after 5 minutes. And oh my God. And and thankfully they were super great, but it was just like, you know, those windows, if you don't get out of
Mhm.
into traffic, like a 5-minute window could like literally cause you a half an hour delay. And I was like, that's not who I want to be as a boss or a person, right? I what I do is great, but it's not about whether or not I'm sitting at my desk and whether I'm, um, and there are times I'm like, I have to step away. I need a break. I need a nap. I needed like 30 minutes to like clear my head. Granted, I can do that at home. So maybe for lunch, I actually took a nap, instead of eating. Um, and not that I'm saying everybody should do that, but you know what I mean? As long as you don't abuse that privilege, right? But it is, it's sometimes from some people don't like it to hear no,
Mhm.
but I learned really quickly if I was honest with people, I didn't set up expectations that I couldn't meet. And most people understood. In fact, they were a little sometimes even jealous of like, wow, Katy doesn't, I always say that I'm the same no matter where you meet me, right? The boardroom, the bathroom, or the bedroom is kind of my joke. And they're like, wow, you're really the same in all those places. But and I believe we can do good work, but we can have a good time doing it. So I don't want anybody, I want everybody to get excited in the morning to get up. And then if they're not, I want to know. Because not you can't be on every day. You're not going to be productive every day. Sometimes you will move mountains and sometimes you will move from the bed to the couch. And both days are just as, that's all you can do. And you got to be okay with the day that you don't have the energy because we can't, no. I mean, even athletes you've seen, sometimes they have the worst day, they don't make a shot. They don't hit a basket. They, fumble the ball 1,000 times. And then some days they're a superstar. I mean, there's statistics about some of the most competitive players out there, and it's only because of consistency that they've managed to achieve goals, right? So that's the thing: be consistent, and and just show up, and then be honest when you can, because nope, nobody's giving awards for most burnout,
Right.
yeah.
How did you learn, or how long did it take you to understand that it was okay to say like, no, I can't do this today, or no, I can't be there. Like, how long did it take you to figure out that role versus expectation versus reality for yourself?
Probably, I would say about 7 years ago, I went through the Women Leading Broward program, which emphasizes strength finders, but there's a whole program about being authentic and your personal brand. And one of the women said, the work-life balance is a myth and that it doesn't exist. Actually, she used the BS word, but I'll keep it clean. And 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 it was very, and the women who spoke at every month, they would have a keynote speaker that they called a leading lady who would speak very authentically about their challenges. And all of a sudden, this veil was lifted of this idea that people in successful places, are just especially women, driven. Some we call them the B word because these women, right? They're just like super, and I get it because in a male driven world, men are tough and whatever, and they can't be sensitive and whatever, and so women are thought that they have to be of that type in order to be successful or be respected. I mean, one thing I hate the most is when somebody confuses my niceness or my sense of humor for somehow like naivety or stupidity, or like somehow or another I don't have, I'm like, why do we have to be so strict about work? I mean, we can have fun, we can tell jokes, and but we can get great things done too. We're human beings, we're not machines. So it was then, and I wasn't even in a leadership role at that time, but after that, I it was like almost like a shift in my mentality, and given permission to, I was like, wait a minute, if that person who is the president of a bank, who is an attorney for a major law firm, who is, all these roles, you think, wow, she's up here, right? And then they came, so to speak, down to your level and realized, no, you know, I I cry too. I don't know the first thing about motherhood. I'm just making it up as I go along. I had these struggles at work and they were just so open and you're like, oh my gosh, well, how refreshing, because you were afraid that somehow or another you didn't have some kind of magic formula that they had, and they were telling you, no, 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 it's not that, in fact, it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to be, scared, um it's okay to say you don't know. I mean, that's the one thing mostly that I try to impart to people is, granted, I've done every job at Neighbors for Neighbors, so I understand, but that doesn't mean I do them all well. We've
Mhm.
actually, we change things around often because we realize that just because this quote unquote position did this job for the longest time does not mean that the current person holding this position is good at it. And that's what Strength Finders does, is it teaches you that. So we try to find out, and what was interesting, it was finding that everybody maybe needed to have things shift. I'm like, well, how about, like, I hated the newsletter. It was everybody loved the newsletter that I wrote, but I hated writing it. It was like, the necessary evil, right? I
Mhm.
gave it to someone else on my team. She loves it. She cannot wait to do the newsletter. She has ideas for the newsletter. She wants to do this with that, wants to do that with that. And all I have to do is send her my message for the newsletter, which I have to do, by the way. I did not finish.
It's
Um,
due now.
but yeah, and well, thankfully we added something else, so we're delayed a little bit. But it would, and she was excited about it, and I was like, oh, and then I got rid of it, and then I was able to focus on other things that I A,
Mhm.
enjoy more, and B, needed more of my attention. So it's, you know, what I think a lot of times women needs to talk to each other and break down those walls and that pull that veil aside, the curtain, and go, oh my God, the great and powerful Oz is a man. He's not, you know what I mean? Or she's a woman, and we all have bad days, and we all, but this idea that to be successful somehow or another, you've got to be, um, you know, stoic and unyielding or whatever. I mean, maybe there is people that are like that, but that would never be me. I would be miserable, you know.
What other advice would you maybe give to like a young woman looking to, lead, especially in industries or roles that are traditionally dominated by men?
Gosh, so many things. But I think one of the biggest things I think I would say is don't be afraid to even try. Forget the whole male dominated thing, right? And even in today's climate, because if believe in yourself, really believe it, manifest it. I believe in manifesting, just to see yourself there, and ask questions and get a mentor. Always helpful, if you can find somebody, even if it's not in that specific career, but something adjacent. And ask questions, and be curious, and be brave. And brave doesn't mean doing things fearlessly. It just means doing it in spite of the fear, and never lead by fear. I actually have a saying, fear is the F word, not the actual F word. When you make, like, really think about it. When has anything ever really gone seriously wrong, right? All your
Mhm.
worst fears, have they ever come to fruition? Probably not. Worrying does not help or solve anything. So don't be afraid, and take a chance. And you may fail, and be okay with that. Use those experiences as learning. And, I mean, there's, how many times did you fall? Well, forget that. How many times did you get up? How,
Mhm.
and sometimes you'll fall and stay down a little longer, but that's okay too. I mean, I've lost jobs. I mean, the second time, let's see, the first time I got laid off, no, this was the second time. No, it was actually another thing. So when I was at Komen and I had my baby, they had told me that I was going to be able to bring her to the office, because she was too little for daycare. You can't put a baby in daycare until 6 weeks old, and I didn't have anybody at home to watch her. And the literal day I came back from maternity leave, they told me, oh, well, we changed our mind. Well, what was I going to do? Can't put her back inside. She's out now. We have to take care of her. It's kind of the law. They will put you in jail if you don't take care of your children. That's what I hear anyway. And or they'll take them away from you. And so I was devastated. And probably when I should have left the organization originally, because it, who does that to someone, right? But also I realized that was a kind of a crazy thing too, to think that I could watch my baby and work at the same time. Babies need a lot of attention. So anyway, it all worked out in the end, and she doesn't hate me. Well, sometimes she's 16. But it was, it was a pivotal point where I realized that, who I wanted to be as a human being and how I wanted to show up for others. And I try to do that now. And so, look for those people that they're going to have your back and that are going to lift you up and bring you along and excuse me, and give you grace. And, I remember when I was first working at Neighbors, I screwed up royally with one of our sponsors. I did not do what I was supposed to do, and they docked us money for the organization. And I thought, I'm fired. That's it. I'm totally fired. You can't lose that kind of money and not be fired. And my boss, who, is still a mentor, and now the former executive, she said, you've learned a valuable lesson. You will never do that again. You know what you did wrong, and you're going to make it right. And you're going to make this even better. And then the next year they gave us not only the money they gave us, but an additional 10 to make up for it, I think, because I had proven myself. And it also showed me that I could not rest on my laurels. I mean, it was up to me how I was going to show up for the organization, for myself. But I really believe, and I think this most important thing is own your mistakes. Don't be afraid to go, you know what, I screwed up. Because who doesn't respect somebody who's going to stand there and go, you know what, you're right. It was my fault. And how can you really be mad and be like, yeah, it was. And then, no, you're going to be like, it's okay. It's all right. No, especially somebody who's like, no, it wasn't me. You're going to be like, yes, it was you. You did it, So, having, accountability, being authentic, those are the biggest things. So whatever you're going to do, male dominated otherwise. In fact, I don't even see that because especially in the nonprofit world, they're mostly run by women anyway. But, the future is pink.
And that leads me to our final question. And then I do have a fun fact about you that I want to ask about too. You have a daughter, she's 16. She's deciding which way she wants to go. She's seen what you have done, the impacts you have made. With your daughter in mind, because I truly think your answer is going to come with her and your thoughts. What changes, whether it to be to opportunities or journeys or progress, would you like to see happen, to see changes for women leaders? Is there something that you think about all the time that, I'm working on it now, so that way when my daughter's 25 and she's deciding what she wants to do, like this opportunity is going to be available to her. She won't have to have the exact same, backbreaking experience that I did.
Gosh, you kind of wish that you could do that, right? To take away the backbreaking from your children. But unfortunately that's life, right? Through those struggles, through those failures, as I mentioned before, is how you grow. But for my daughter, I'd really try to be honest with her, but within a certain limit, I guess you could say. Because, you don't want to tell her about all the crazy things you did and like, hey, here's permission to go and just be crazy. But at the same time, I try to instill to my daughter, for her, I'll give an example. So she's in 10th grade. Last year, 9th grade, first year of high school, she struggled because, she was just like, I don't know, she wasn't doing her assignments. She wasn't giving study time. She just was more interested in socializing. And I was like, look, it doesn't take much effort to succeed, right? And but you've got to put at least a little bit in, right? And so I kind of let her fail a little to show her. And then when she succeeded, I was like, what was the difference? What did you do different? Because I mean, we had battles every time, um, and of why'd you get that grade, and and what was the thing? And she would always like blame someone else, and I was like, look, but I said, the one thing that I will do for you that will never change is I will give you whatever resource you need. If you need a tutor, if you need, extra study time, if you need whatever you need to succeed, whatever materials you need, whatever tools you need, I will be there. But you have to ask for it. You can't just be like, well, the teacher didn't teach me because, okay, maybe it is the subject is you're struggling and the teacher's not, you're not connecting with the teacher, but I can find somebody else who can help you unlock the switch and open up the understanding, right? But you've got to tell me. And then now in 10th grade, she's an A student, and like literally got a phone call today from her math teacher who only calls the families of A students to encourage them and congratulate them. And I love these calls. I'm like, yay, that's the best call ever, and then I forwarded the voicemail to her so she could hear it because I wasn't there to answer the call. But now I try to empower my daughter with her successes. I'm like, think about what you did to get that. Was it a huge amount of effort? Did you miss any parties or social time with your friends or, things like that? And she's like, no. And I'm like, okay, good. So, and then also, I mean, maybe bribery a little bit on this part, but I was like, I go, if you do well in school, the better you do, I'll give you whatever you want within my means and reasonable, right? So, and she will come in and she's like, Mom, can you get me everything in my Shein cart? And I was like, okay, well, I'll have to look at it because sometimes there's outfits that I don't approve of. And because he's 16, I'm like, yeah, you shouldn't be wearing that. And she goes, I know what you're gonna say. And I was like, what am I gonna say? She goes, A students get whatever they want. And I was like, yeah, within reason though, and because I can't be just like a jerk too. You still have to be respectful to me. But that's the thing. I mean, like I had a conversation with my daughter to kind of also answer your question about looking for a job that pays you enough money, right? And how valuable your time is. And this conversation was brought on because of a friend of mine who has her own business and does these really creative projects, but they're very time intensive. And I said, is this worth the money, right? Even in nonprofits, we do that. Like I'm going to get, say $2,000 from this sponsor, right, for this thing, but now I've done $8,000 worth of work for $2,000. And there are times you have to walk away from a donation because it is not worth your time. And or a grant that might cause you a lot of extra paperwork. So I said, okay, think about what you're doing for a job and then how much work it takes and then how much you're getting paid. Like, what does that equate like as far as your bills and all that kind of stuff and how much? So making her understand her value, because I want her to think about, because yeah, you could, have a career, get any insert career here, right? But are you gonna get paid enough? Would you really be happy? And would you be able to survive with that kind of money? And would it give you the time you need? So, I've been fortunate to grow into this role and become the CEO. It comes with great responsibility, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm responsible for the financial success of this organization, not only just financial, but the success of our outcomes and the things we're providing to the community. They kind of go hand in hand because if I don't have the data to say we help this many people are not going to give us money to keep doing it, right? They're going to be like, so why am I giving you money if you're not, giving out anything? So, think about that and then also look at careers that are at risk of disappearing. So the world is changing. So what are the new jobs that are going to be sustainable, that are going to be lucrative, and where, where would you want to work? Um, and you could probably even chat GPT that, I mean, there may be, or Google it for sure. Um, and then, and then be brave enough to do, because what I want, I've never said, I want you to become a lawyer. She's actually saying she wants to become a lawyer. I don't think she understands what kind of schooling that's going to take and library time, as not her. But then she talked about being in CSI. And I thought, well, that sounds actually more your speed, less of an education, like intensive requirement. And then my dad said, well, actually, they're looking for forensic accountants, and she's really good in math. And I thought, well, there you go, because that's where they don't need any more, blood analysts and all that, and the photographers and stuff. They need somebody to do forensic accounting, for the money laundering that they're doing. And so I was like, oh, that's very interesting. So it's like, trying to encourage her in those ways, and then also just stepping back sometimes, because she has to have her journey, and and letting her do that, because um that's how you grow,
Mhm.
being a guiding light, but at the same time, going, okay, and never just saying no unless she's like, can I go out after 11 o'clock? And it's like, well, no. Nothing good happens at your age after 11 o'clock. um you know and I know, because I was there doing the things I shouldn't have been doing. um but that's a journey too, right? you know
Mhm.
um but it and interestingly enough, I mean, this guy, I'm a little bit of an older mom, for even though I have a 16-year-old. It took me a long time to have a child. So, if I had had a child when I really tried starting, I'm, as they call, advanced maternal age. Maybe don't look it, but so there's that too, where you just kind of like become a little bit more laid back as you get a little older. The things that bothered you in the past don't as much, and so just trying to let her find her place, because she's totally capable. And then the last thing I would say is also remember, especially in school. I mean, what
Mhm.
is required of our children is a lot more than we require at home usually. They get such a pass at home these days. You know, the the chores they could be doing, the responsibilities they could be taking on, we're not challenging them enough. So I'm like, you want that? Go figure it out. I'm not doing it for you. So when it comes time to like to apply to college, I will pay for whatever, but you got to do the research and figure out what they need, and then I will help you organize it and whatever. But I'm going to teach her to fish rather than give her a fish, as they say.
Fantastic. And this has been very insightful. And I kind of want to get a little playful with you. I know you from the chamber, so my relationship with you is different in how I know you. So for those listening in, if you happen to go by a Marlins baseball game, you might hear Katy sing the national anthem. How did that come about? Like I've always wanted to ask you that every time
Well,
I see you at chamber meetings, because I think that's like so cool. Like that's so cool. Like there's all these people in this city, and they have you come out often to sing the national anthem.
yeah, I've only sung for the Marlins once, but I used to sing for the Miami Heat and the Florida Panthers a lot, again, back in the 1900s. And that actually came out of an open audition that the Miami Heat had. I can even tell you when it was, because I remember it was October 14th, 1995. They had an open audition for the Miami Heat to looking for anthem singers. So it was like a big, God, I can't imagine how many people came out and sang the national anthem over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, because that's what they were looking for. And so I was doing that. And interestingly enough, met my husband there. He was actually um, um, uh, I had gone to college with him. We both went to basically Art Institute of Fort Lauderdale for TV production. He focused more on audio. But I was a singer ever since my first solo. I was 5 years old. I was in Catholic school, and the nun asked my mom if I could sing at church on Sunday, and so I've been singing ever since. And then I sang through high school. I actually went to college with the intent to become like a professional singer and get my I don't know why get my degree, but I went to UM, and because they had a great music school, and then realized that while I have a great voice, I'm not a great musician. Like I don't play an instrument, I don't read music, and so I was not going to get an education in singing, so then I went the TV production route. My mother was like, "You're always very interested," so but singing the national anthem was really cool. I sang for the Heat, and in fact, they would call me often when like somebody would be too nervous and like back in the dressing room and like I can't come out, I can't do this, And I remember one time like I was like I don't have something appropriate to wear. They're like, "Don't worry, we're gonna put a jersey on you. We're gonna put Bernie right next to you, and he's just gonna be silly or whatever, and we'll make it like a casual but fun anthem." I was like, okay, and then the Panthers when they first came, they just said, "Do you have any anthem singers?" to the other team because they both were at the Miami Arena at the time. They shared the building. And so I sang for the Panthers, and I sang when the Panthers went to the Stanley Cup Finals originally, or when they went to the playoffs. And then I've sung for the Miami Hurricanes, and then the Marlins. We teamed up with them a lot for nonprofit things. They're very philanthropic team. And so we had like a Neighbors for Neighbors day, and I was like, "Hey, can I sing the anthem that day?" I will tell you a fun fact about that real quick is that singing in an arena versus a stadium is a very different thing. And I understand why at the Super Bowl coming up this weekend, for example, that whenever it is, that why they record their anthem, because there is an echo of your own voice that comes back. And it was almost impossible for me to compete with my own voice. So it slowed me down, I was like, this is crazy. I can't speed this up. And they want you to sing it like in, 90 seconds. And it took me, or less. And it took me like almost 2 minutes, which is not a long time. 90 seconds is another 30 seconds. But it was the most beautiful anthem I ever sang, just the longest. And it turned out they want you to sing it so that you do it during a commercial break. Usually you don't see the anthem, and it'll be during commercial break and then they go live. Some teams do, some sports put it on. And anyway, so I guess we think we were playing the Mets, and the announcer for the Mets was like, "Ladies and gentlemen, we're sorry the opening pitch is a little delayed, but I'll tell you because of this beautiful anthem." And then I guess the next day, the girl who was singing, or I don't know if it was a girl, but whoever was singing was very nervous, and their anthem came out not well. And the guy, my husband works in sports TV and does audio, and the guy turned to my husband and said, "Where's your wife? Bring her back. Bring her back." But yeah, so my goal, I want to sing for the Panthers again. I would love to do that. And for the Heat, for a while there, they had like a little girl who sang because they were on a streak, and every time she sang, they won. So they're very superstitious. And I love to sing the Canadian national anthem too, at a game, so, but yeah, I'm a singer all the time.
Awesome. Oh, that's amazing. Thank you, Katy, for taking the time to help us celebrate women's history and share your own journey and what it's meant to you. And thank you for the work you do with Neighbors for Neighbor in the local community.
Thank you so much for having me, and let me talk your ear off.
And we'd love to have you anytime. And if you guys have enjoyed this episode of Keiser Voices and you want to continue the conversation as we celebrate Women's History Month all month long, please be sure to share, like, and subscribe and follow to stay connected with us. Till the next episode, we will catch you then.
Thank you for journeying with us today on Keiser Voices, the story of success. As we close this chapter, remember every story has its next page.